Hello and welcome back to the In Your Mind podcast. You're with Kira and today, Jemma. Guest ep.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure always.
We're thinking we were going to talk a little bit about a meditation summit that we've both recently watched and delved into a bit. They had like lots of different speakers, like Deepak Chopra. What was the one that we were just talking about
Craig
before?
Hamilton.
Craig Hamilton. So it was called the Heart Mind Institute. And then it was the Art of Global Meditation Summit. And Fleet Mall was the guy who like put on the seminar. And it was all like online. So global. Yeah. So what was like one of the real standout talks to you, or something, the one that you feel like you've got the most out of today? Because it was like when we watched it initially was a couple months ago. So what's one that you think like just still kind of rings true today that you can like call on?
Yeah, well, I feel like, I love listening to Deepak Chopra because he really gets into more abstract concepts and quantum physics and quantum mechanics and all that kind of stuff, consciousness, and I really like listening to his perspectives on things because I haven't necessarily had those experiences within my own meditation practices of like that facet of enlightenment, I guess, or because I feel like there's a lot of different, or I should say not enlightenment but awakening, and I feel like he's had different insights into the nature of life and awakenings than some other people may have, and they're pretty, I don't want to say advanced, but highly technical sort of experiences.
Very like metaphysical and like other realmly. Like he explains very large concepts, I feel like, with very simple effort, like minimal effort. Like
Yeah. And he breaks down things that are sort of concepts that are hard to keep with you all the time at the front of your brain as like in your knowledge library, I don't know, because it's like such an abstract way of thinking that I feel like our normal ways of processing information struggle to like retain that information, which was also spoken about by Craig Hamilton, which we both really enjoyed his interview. And he was talking about how after awakening experiences, they occur through a part of our brain that is not held within our emotional or mental brain. And after we've had an experience of awakening, you are reflecting on the experience through your emotional and mental brain, but once you've kind of come back down to that more like base state. And a lot of people struggle to reflect the insights they had and just the insights they had because it came from sort of like a different level of our brain that is hard to access on a regular basis. So, which I really resonated with because I also had similar experiences and struggled to kind of hold all of those insights with me, which has been an interesting journey.
Yeah. Maybe like we should kind of touch on like why you're even interested in meditation to begin with, because then we can kind of frame why we like this and like what got you into the practice, and like maybe just that, starting off with that, like what got you into meditation.
Yeah, so I was always very scientific and logical and practical. I still kind of am, but...
And your degree as well is very...
I did a degree in medical biotechnology, and I just also graduated from my honours doing research on Alzheimer's disease. And I had tried meditation when I was younger and sort of was trying to achieve something out of it, or thought that there was a certain way that I needed to do it and I could either be good at it or not good at it, et cetera, but I've now created a different relationship where I see it as not something that anyone needs to try be good at or bad at. It's sort of just, I guess I've learnt from different people, and particularly Sam Harris's Waking Up app was pretty influential for me at the start of my meditation journey and still now, in redefining what meditation meant for me. And instead of it being that I needed to sit there and have no thoughts, and if I was having all these thoughts and that meant I was terrible at meditation, it's actually the true power of meditation is just in recognizing when you're thinking and continually going back to baseline and just recognizing I was drifted off in this thought for a while. Okay, interesting. I'll come back to center again and then drift off again and then come back. And, you know, it's kind of just that process of continually recognizing that starts to train you up in the skill of it. And I think a lot of people have the wrong definition of meditation. Not the wrong, but maybe a misinformed definition, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely was like similar in seeing that like meditation, like I was like, oh, I'm not good at meditation. Like immediately I was like, I can't do that. I can't just sit and not think.
Yeah.
But that's
everyone
actually
thinks it's
not
thinking. And,
yeah,
you know,
it's just you're sitting there and you're
stopping
trying
your
not to
thoughts.
think.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. But it's actually, yeah, I think you said it really well. It's just like, just recognizing, oh, like I've just been thinking for the past 2 minutes, past couple minutes, and now I'm not. Okay. Like it's like meta awareness. It's trying to cultivate like you like understanding when you've gotten into like an unconscious process and thought, and you don't need to have any judgment about that, because it happens. It happens to people at all stages of their meditation journey. It's not a bad thing. Like it's a natural way of life. If we didn't think, like, you know, what would we be doing, you know?
Yeah. And I think that recognizing it as that instead of as silencing your mind, which I think does come from the practice, is like a side effect of it, which is probably where that perspective came from, but or where things got a bit misconstrued down the line, but as it's become more commercialized especially. But and I think now it's also simplified to like a stress relief. Most people like come across it in our Western culture as a method to reduce stress, but it's so much more complex than that. It has so much more value than that. And yeah, it can be a lot of different things. Yeah. But yeah, in realizing that and establishing a new relationship with it, I found a lot more enjoyment in it. And I did at the start, right before my honours actually, I think it was around February of 2023, I did this little program called Feel Good Feb that one of my friends was running. And I did just like a week of consistent meditation using the Sam Harris Waking Up app. And I got recommended that through just listening to the Andrew Huberman Labs podcast. And they, I think it may be sponsored by the Waking Up app, and they mentioned it and that they all use it and love it. And I really enjoyed that podcast, so I trusted their opinion and went off to try the app. And after those 7 days, it was a really different form of meditation that involved a lot more philosophy and like insight and deep thinking that I hadn't previously had with past meditation experiences, and I really enjoyed that. So that drove me to be further inclined to do some more meditation. But fortunately, after the 7 days, I think I think I had a 30-day free trial. So I did 7 days and then left it for a while, got started with my honours, and then that was kind of where everything sort of spiraled, but also
collided.
yeah, and then came together in a nice way. But I think about a month into my honours, or 3 weeks or something, if we're thinking about when this membership was ending up.
Yeah.
I was feeling pretty overwhelmed with everything, and had a habit at least of putting a lot of pressure on myself, and I've always kind of put a lot of value in academia and how I perform and my level of intelligence and whatnot. And that started to take a big toll on me in honours because I had all these really educated, smart people around me and that I looked up to. And I was, having to do presentations to them on things that I felt they might know better than me, or et cetera, et cetera. However, I now respect that everyone holds a different, book of knowledge, and you can learn from everyone in different ways. And by the end of it, I felt like I had become my own little expert in my area. And
obviously, like, it seems like it was really helpful for you in a time where you were kind of stressed and overwhelmed, and you'd been just introduced to a technique that was really helpful before you started honours, and then getting 3 weeks in and going, oh, like, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. Is that when you then decided to jump back into it?
Yeah. So I was at this point where I started to build up a lot of pressure and expectations on myself, and decided that I really would like to pick back up my meditation practice. So I revisited the app and did a couple sporadic meditations on certain days where I was feeling like I really needed that reset button. And and it had been so helpful for me in those moments. So from there I then had like a few weeks after that, I think I then started to have these like a full awakening experience, basically beating around the bush. But I had this point where I just, everything I had previously believed sort of fell apart, and in a really nice and clear way. And I could see that there was an alternative way that I could be living my life that was fully in my control. And I didn't have to live the way that I had learnt to live, or from friends and family and growing up and whatever. I could now go forward at this point in my life and choose to live the way I wanted to live and be the person I wanted to be. So it was sort of like, my ego I sort of experienced an ego dissolution. And the things that came through for me were wanting to work on generosity, kindness, compassion, patience, listening, all these kind of things. And they really came through as truths and that I wanted to live by. And also I felt a lot of gratitude for the meditation practice, and I felt that there was something really deeply profound in that practice, that I don't know if I would have had these sort of experiences of enlightening experiences without that coming into my life. So I decided that I wanted to continue a daily practice of meditation, and give myself that space to kind of reflect on everything and reflect on where I am, and take a breather every day to take stock, and be intentional about my day from the point that I meditated onwards. And that's sort of where it all happened, and it became a beautiful practice for me.
Wow. I feel like people might not, or you might have a different definition, or someone else listening might have a different definition for like an awakening or what you really experience. So maybe like explaining kind of like what that was a little bit more. Yeah. So like, if I kind of broadly could see it as like a like a big pivotal moment, like a revelation, an epiphany.
Yeah, I feel like it was a culmination of just like realizing a lot of different things. I got very existential at first, and I was having a lot of big existential thoughts about where my learnt behaviours were coming from, because it sort of stemmed from me questioning further and further whether I needed to live out of this place of stress and pressure and expectations, and if I could release myself from that grip, and if I could function instead out of a different motivational place that was potentially more healthy. So then I got to a place of deep self-inquiry, which spiraled the process of me kind of unpacking a lot of my behaviors. a lot of my behaviors and beliefs, and then everything started to just kind of fall apart, and that's what I would sort of call an awakening. It's just like all of these realizations. I had all of these truths about the way I had been living and the way like I wanted to move forward living. And I guess it's just like a sudden period of or moment of becoming conscious.
Yeah.
Versus previously I feel like I was acting out of an unconscious state. Whereas now I could be more intentional, which I think comes from a place of like being more conscious about your actions. Having intention is like being consciously aware of what you're doing and why, rather than just doing it because you're used to it and it's your pattern and you've been taught it and you've learned it and you know it's comfortable. And I think once you become and that's sort of becoming awake, becoming conscious. Yeah.
And then, so like cut to the present day. So how do you take those like learnt, those lessons that you had, and how does that kind of apply to your life now? Like what aspects of those things still remain for you today?
It's been interesting, and I think going back to Craig where we left off, Craig Hamilton, and bringing in what we learnt from the Art of Meditation Summit. It's been a challenge to not hold myself to that standard and sort of want to reach that point, and also feel guilt or and also like feeling guilt when I am not feeling as though I'm aligning with that version of myself or with that state. So that has been like my main period that I'm in now in terms of learning and trying to return with a beginner's mind to my meditation practice. As opposed to coming into it with the past experiences and trying to live up to some standard of my previous experiences.
So how do you think, with what you've kind of learnt through meditation practice, and like how that like shift of like an awakening or a change in like how you go about things, like trying to live consciously, how does not only a meditation practice like how does it go beyond a practice basically?
I think it's one of the main things I took away from this summit was that it's so much more than just the practice. It's about embodying a new version of yourself, or like living by those revelations or insights in every moment of every day, and living out of that meditative place and present conscious state in every moment, rather than just in your meditation practice and expecting your meditation practice to change you over time, rather than doing it yourself and acting out of your own intentional behaviors every day and every moment.
From the summit, what are some of the things that, like, so you were talking about like Craig Hamilton's and his point of view of like holding like an expectation in your meditation practice. So do you think that's something that you kind of always have to struggle with, or how do you think you kind of begin to like heal that expectation?
See, that's the $1 million question.
Right, yeah.
That is like what I'm trying to work on, and I think I'd love to connect with some more spiritually experienced people, and that's why I want to go to the Himalayas. But you know, find people anywhere and everywhere who have got a lot of experience and maybe similar experience to me, who have managed to move past it. But I think I try every day to reset myself and not have an expectation, but it is hard when I've had an experience that was so profound to me and just so much truth came out of it, and I could really see just like the person who I wanted to be, and the way I wanted to intentionally, and the place I wanted to live out of every day. But then coming back to a pretty chaotic society that is, you know, very fast paced and based on productivity, and a lot of people do live out of a place of stress to get them by and get them doing things. It is a challenge to maintain that composure and state of inner peace and tranquility. But yeah, I definitely think that my meditations do still help me reset. But one of the things moving forward that I would like to do that I think will assist me in my meditations is getting consistent with them again, because I did them daily and I think that made such a difference, and that's something that they mentioned a lot in the summit. A lot of the speakers mentioned that. It was a very consistent theme that daily meditation practice is definitely recommended, and I've been in a big phase of change after graduating and moving back with my parents before I go overseas and working to save, and so my lifestyle's been a bit shaken up and it's been hard to have a consistent practice, but that's definitely a goal for me, because I think out of a consistent practice is where, I mean, when you're not consistently practicing, I think for me, I'm noticing that a lot of the times I feel like I need to work on the basic skills again of concentration and in my practice and focus, rather than the more complex level of meditation, I guess, or a different style of meditation, which is the insight meditation.
Yeah.
Where or practicing metta and things like that, and where I can really gain from what I'm learning in my meditation, rather than just trying to learn how to settle into the practice of meditation. So I think I keep kind of flip-flopping between the two, because my mind gets busier, I think, when I'm not consistently meditating. And so I find it, I don't know.
Do you think you need to have a structured form of meditation in order to cultivate awareness moments throughout your day? Like, do you think it needs to be like that?
I don't know. I think that, no, not necessarily. I think I do still try to be, I think I am managing to still be relatively in touch with my true intentions and reset and bring myself back to the present and re-center myself and focus my mind just in various moments throughout the day, and not like in a specific set aside meditation. But I think I remember to do that, or it comes more naturally as like a process that I'm doing during the day without even thinking about it, and I'll just naturally like do it when I'm consistently meditating.
So it's like almost like just less effortful.
Yeah.
It's more effortless is the way I was like, what does that sound? Yeah, it's like
I think it
effortless.
definitely becomes more effortless when you're meditating consistently, because you have that point that you already reset in the morning, for example, because I really like doing it in the morning.
I think just on that, I think so I've been kind of semi-inconsistent, like every couple of days doing a meditation.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
But I've also been writing my intentions for the day, which I think has been somewhat transferring that, and like really thinking about like what I need to do and when and why, and like what I want, like what is the deeper goal behind these activities, and what are the things that like my heart's telling me that I want to do, and what are the things academically that I need to do. How can I try and balance, like, because my life at the moment is a lot of like balancing like what I need for my body, what I need for my mind, what I need for like my goals and my like striving. Nice. And like
I'd like to be in that place
like,
again soon.
like that. Like it's trying to balance those kind of things. And I do find that the journaling practice or writing on paper, the couple of things that you want to do, even if it's a list, and really thinking about why you're doing these things or why they're important to you in that moment.
Yeah.
Like just a time sitting down and going, why am I doing this?
Yeah, that reminds me of something that I think was really beneficial and kind of unintentional in my last year's practice of meditation. I was sort of unintentionally practicing gratitude.
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily bringing paper with me to write it down or doing any of that, but when I would go and meditate, I always made sure to try to I always meditate outdoors. And I just think it transports me to a place of solitude where I can really connect with like my deeper self. And yeah, when I was doing my meditations on the beach, I would usually do them over last year. I would kind of make a whole experience of it, and I would be at the beach for like an hour. I would go for a swim. I would do a meditation, and I would sit there and reflect on how grateful I am to be where I'm at and to have that morning, and then how grateful I am to go about what I'm going to do in my day, and just because I was trying to be so present and really savor every moment of what I was doing now. And that really kind of naturally brings you into a state of gratitude where you want to reflect on what you're doing and how grateful you are for it, because it's going to pass. And I think that really helped me then go into, and I was also sort of in a way setting intentions for my day, because I would meditate and then I would reflect on how I felt after my meditation and think about how I could bring that into the rest of my day, and reflect on who I wanted to be and the version of myself I envisaged what version of myself I envisaged going through that day and who I wanted that to be. And that really helped me act out of that place during the day. But yeah, and then it can be important to have moments through the day where you kind of check in with yourself and have a deep breath and a moment, am I still aligning with that? And yeah, so I think that was really powerful, a really powerful supplement to my meditation practice that I probably don't give enough onus. Credit. I think it's setting aside your day to quickly do your meditation before you rush into your busy day again. Really
is it that intentional?
Can take away from the practice, which
I also think I think that's a great point that you raised about the gratitude practice alongside with it, because that's something like Bella and I, my sister and I, we were on a run yesterday, and the whole time Bella's just like, oh, I'm so glad we get to run together as a family. Like, this is so nice, and the sun is setting. And I was like reflecting, I was like, wow, like, shit, that's so great, like internally. And then by the end of the run, I was like, no, I have to let this out, and I have to say like, wow, thank you. Like, I'm grateful that you brought the gratitude, because then I can reflect on that too. And I think gratitude is one of those powerful things which instantly transforms your state.
It does, yeah.
Like, it's so instantaneous.
It's so powerful.
Such a powerful practice. And yeah, it's something that I definitely...
It really brings you into where you are in your present moment as well. It's very similar to meditation.
Yeah, it is just like so quick. And I definitely need more of that, I think, as well.
Yeah, because it has that extra layer of bliss that it brings in. Because sometimes I finish a meditation and I feel very like that empty state that you can feel after you leave a meditation. You can feel this
empty in a way, in what way? You know, when people say empty and it's like,
what does empty mean?
Hollow, like, you know what I mean? But it still feels.
It's
full.
more just like as if someone has just gone and like poured a bucket of water over your head. That's maybe a warm bucket of water over your head, and you just feel like everything's been cleansed and that you feel comforted and in a state of ease and calmness. But I think not always energized and blissful. And I think gratitude can help bring that element in, because I think that's a state that I sometimes strive to achieve, which I need to do less striving to achieve.
Yeah,
but
the expectations.
but it is a nice feeling, that
Totally.
the bliss state.
But yeah, I do think that gratitude leads you to the bliss. It's like seeing things in their truth without, like, being intentional in the present moment and seeing the beauty in things, or seeing the beauty in a person, or in an act, or in an action, or a behavior, and going, wow, that's amazing. Like, I'm so grateful that I'm witnessing it, or seeing it, or feeling it, or like just like acknowledging something for what it is.
Yeah, and it patterns your brain, I think, during the day to pick out those things that are beautiful rather than the things that are there to notice that might be less beautiful. But why would you want to know?
Yeah.
When you can notice the beautiful things.
Yeah, definitely. I think our brains, like, just biologically are very wired to pick up the negative things and the potential danger. So,
and when we're uncomfortable, to want to, like, transport us elsewhere, which is then when we kind of go, no, I don't want to be here, I want to think about other things. Oh, I'm so excited for when I'm not doing this, or when the weekend comes, or when whatever, rather than looking for what we can gain out of that uncomfortability in that situation.
Yeah, and I definitely think it is a repetition and an ingraining of, like, that gratitude practice, making it a more frequent thing, so it does just come up unsolicited, of being, oh wow, look at that incredible flower, or like just something tiny that you didn't even have to initiate, but it just starts to trickle down into your life.
Yeah, totally. Oh
yes, a lot of people come to meditation from yoga and from having, like, a teacher do a little bit of mindfulness at the end of a class, or feeling, and just, like, feeling something uplifting about the mindfulness state and about the meditation. Also, people come at it through experiencing, like, psychedelics and going kind of deeper into their mind and thinking, like, how can I get into this state in, like, kind of from a lens of, like, not needing a drug or something as well. So
I've had this experience, and can I continue to access that experience through something that won't make me reliant on a substance? And then they find meditation is a way of doing that sometimes.
Yeah, and I think, like, and then other people will go to the doctors and have, like, heart issues or stress issues, and doctors will prescribe mindfulness-based stress reduction, or some other form of, like, acceptance and commitment therapy, which encompasses mindfulness and a mindfulness practice. So it can look very different, but really the point in which I'm bringing this up is to point to the reasons for why you've come to mindfulness or meditation will really dictate the experience that you have with it. So if you've come from, like, a yoga perspective and you've been, like, taught a lot of the language and, like, you've experienced the breath as, like, a transformative thing of, like, opening up different poses and, like, releasing tension, like, you might see meditation as, like, kind of, like, more, like, of a spiritual practice, whereas someone who comes at it through a more, like, medical
through the medical route,
they might see it as more of, like, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to feel less stressed.
And I will achieve this out of it.
Having one designated, like, goal. And then, like, if you've done psychedelics or something and you're wanting more of, like, a transformative, sober mind experience where you're going deeper into your consciousness, then you might be searching for, like, that spiritual element of, like, unlocking different states of yourself or finding, like, a higher being. Which I also think
altered
you could get.
States of consciousness.
So altered states, which does include things like breath work and yoga and ice bath and, like, all of those things.
You can achieve it through those,
which are all, like, very natural, or even, like, states of awe is, like, another type of altered state. So those are all things that you can achieve very naturally, But yeah, it is interesting to think about like what is your expectation going into the practice, and therefore like what doors does it, or what veils does it like let open?
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess if you come in through, yeah, and I guess it would change like maybe what your perspectives are on even what you can achieve, like what is possible from that practice, you know. And you might have limitations there, or feel like you could achieve above and beyond if you've come from, well, for me, starting with a pretty profound altered state of consciousness, or experience with an altered state of consciousness, I think it was, wait, I don't know what I'm saying.
Well, so I feel like it sounds to me like you've come at it kind of through two ways. You first were like just introduced to this thing of like mindfulness, and I don't really know what your prior assumptions of mindfulness, maybe actually, yeah, you kind of said that you just thought that you had to be, you know, trying to clear your mind the whole time, and the whole goal was to like have no thoughts. But was that still your thought when you went into like doing the February of like the 7 days?
Yeah, I guess meditation? At first I didn't understand that meditation was a practice that can fundamentally change you as a human being and who you are, and at your core just start to unravel everything. And I more thought that it was just a skill that I needed to be good at, like a hobby that was something I would get good at, sort of thing, rather than it actually changing who I was and my behaviors. So I guess like doing a sport or something, like doing soccer. Sort of like that, rather than some learning language as a kid, or learning English, and that fully taught me how to, you know, communicate as a human.
So then how did so that state, so once you had like the overwhelming experiences of like the pressure, and then you kind of looked at meditation again because you felt something was there, or something, it was useful to you in that moment, like then like when you were in honors and you're like, I need something to help me, and you go back to the meditation, you're kind of looking for relief in some way, but then that actually, like, you might not have thought, oh, I'm gonna have this whole revelation about life and I'm gonna like change it, but also you were kind of like, I want out of this state, this is too much, like there's too much stress here, there's too much, like I need something needs to help me. So you were kind of going to those meditations going like, show me what else there is. So in the conference, we kind of were looking at quite a few talks that were talking about like, well, especially the Craig Hamilton one that was talking about how you come into it really shapes your view of like what is possible, and or also like your limitations and your barriers. And those also happen too further down the line when you're meditating. Like you start to have, I guess it's kind of more about, we're talking about like the expectations that you start to have of like what you should be experiencing versus
and
like
what you should, and it becomes an achieving thing, and what you should achieve out of your meditation, and the expectations that you put on yourself. And I think that there was one speaker, Roshi Jan Chosen Bays, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but she was talking about how I think was expressing some level of skepticism towards, or criticism towards, psychedelics, and the fact that when people come to meditation after a psychedelic experience, sometimes they can then feel like reliant on the substance to enable them to achieve that state that they've previously achieved through a psychedelic experience, and are looking for that either in their meditation, or feel that they just need to resort to using the substance again to be able to achieve that. But I think that that can also occur, as I've experienced, through just through the meditation. And I think although I know that I can reach that state again because I have the exact same resources as when I've previously reached that state, it can still become something that you are trying to strive for and that you want to access, and it can almost become more frustrating when you don't have a substance to directly access it when you want on demand. But yeah, so it's interesting, like the conflict there. And not that I think that obviously I've expressed that I don't think that the aim is to strive for a certain state, and it's not, and instead it's to just live out of, choose intentionally in every moment to live out of the state that you want to align with, and in doing that you will be doing exactly, you will be this at the state that you want to be in, you know. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think like when you're talking about how like you can have like these profound experiences and these like meditative like states of like kind of like an altered state, because it's just like your brain connects, like your brain connection, like a psychedelic, is in a higher communication than usual. So it is like an overwhelming flood of hormones, beliefs, ideas, like things just flooding to you. And that, you can't predict that. Like if you take a psychedelic drug, or if you're ingesting something, you're instantly signaling that for that to happen, and for your brain to go placid and not placid, plastic, the opposite of placid, to go into like that malleable state and to start like rewiring those connections.
Because it immediately has those changes on like which parts of your brain are active. And and then with like meditative state that can, and more reliably maybe.
I don't know. It's
in meditation, I guess you can access that in each meditation to a change of state. In a way.
I don't think it's as common, and it's not like predictable, because we can't just tell ourselves, okay, let's have like a really, let's get these brain
jump
networks
out of space and time, and
you can't just be like this. But I think also at the same time, that's not to say that can't happen.
You also can.
That also can happen after a couple of revelations and you know, seeing some connections and going, oh, okay, like I've, you know, just pulling things together when it reaches like a pivotal moment of understandings and awareness and feeling, like then that can happen. But now like that I say that, I feel like that could really only happen when you do have a consistent thing that you're building upon, or it would be more reliable if you have something that it is consistent that you're working on, or trying to like break a belief down in your head, or trying to achieve something and you're questioning, okay, how do I get to this thing? Okay, how do I get to this thing? It's the focus on that one task, and then looking at it through different angles, but also stepping your foot off the gas a little bit and going, this is the thing that I want to achieve. Let's see that in everyday life, in everyday interaction. And then it might all unfold in a meditation, because you're letting yourself give all your attention back to yourself, and all your energy is presented internally.
Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful thing that Roshi Jan was trying to say, is that there is so much power and beauty in what we hold within ourselves, and to know that you can take your meditation practice with you wherever you go. You can transport it with you, and it doesn't need to go in a suitcase, because you've got it. You are the person who you have all the facilities that you need to do the meditation. Just being you and human, and that's a nice thing to know, and it can be comforting in your practice to know that even when you feel like you're getting frustrated with where you're at and struggling to reach a certain state, you can remind yourself that it is accessible and it's there, because you do have everything that you need to access it. Whereas some Whereas, yeah, if you're relying on a psychedelic substance, then it's not always going to be on hand. And yeah.
You're relying on something that's not you.
Yeah, it's cool. It's empowering to know that it's within you in meditation. Although I do think both are great ways of accessing altered states of consciousness. But and I don't think that one is necessarily better than the other. They have different benefits. But
I do think like being able to cultivate awareness and consciousness as much as possible is a good thing. So therefore I would say that like a practice or just the intention of living with consciousness or intention is in some ways better, because then there's more time in it. Like your body can't function being on a psychedelic 24/7. It's not sustainable. Like you can't be having all of those.
You may enter psychosis.
Yeah, no, it's not sustainable, but it is helpful to like break down some, like it's a medicine and it can break down some tough things that you haven't been able to find. Or
Yeah, I think people mention that it can help them in their practice, because you can have these revelations if you are feeling like you're in a rut with your meditation and you're not getting to this next level or next phase of where you want to go with it. It can help you unleash this way of thought and thinking that you weren't able to access, and you can then return to your meditations and daily life with that knowledge in mind and those insights that you've received, and then live through that in your meditation, and it can kind of allow you to have this new level of where you feel like you can go. Sort of like with what we were talking about before, with kind of people can get out of it only as much as they sort of think they're able to achieve from it in a way. But yes and
Definitely.
no. Yeah, yes and no. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like that's why it can be so powerful for, helping cure like depression.
Treatment resistant
depression and like PTSD and these things and trauma, and like it, because it can go so above and beyond the confines of the mind and release the unconscious processes that are just playing out.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I feel like a big thing is needed to shift those things. Whereas
it allows you to get outside of yourself and your ego and kind of go into a place of like, what's the word? Sort of like go into a place of like
unanimous,
sort of like
equilibrium,
non-judgment, like I can't think of the word I'm thinking of, but like they allow you to go out of your self and into a dimension of like unbiased kind of thought in a way. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, basically you were saying how psychedelics allow you to go into like a place where your usual functioning brain wouldn't necessarily go, because it's limited by the patterns of beliefs.
And the behaviours are so
and the limits that you think.
Yeah. And like, I think part of it,
it's like, limited by your limits, if you know what I mean. Like
it is.
But psychedelics kind of have their own limits.
Yeah.
And they take you to that next dimension.
Because they're gonna make those brains, like those networks and the activation of all of those brain states is gonna happen whether you like it or not, if you've ingested like a psychoactive substance.
And it allows
that's happening
to take you to a place that you maybe wouldn't be able to go with where you currently are at. Maybe at some point, if through different learning and life experiences or whatever, but in that current moment, maybe you feel that you aren't able to achieve it with what you currently know and like the confines of those limitations of what you know.
And I think that's why, like at the moment, like psychedelics are quite a last resort. Not a last resort, but it's like an extreme. They're legalized for something that is extreme, that there's nothing else that is found that can help, these disorders or these problems.
Yeah, for like treatment-resistant depression and stuff.
Yeah. So
And a lot of mental health disorders and illnesses. Because currently there's not a lot out there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it needs something like pretty drastic to like switch it. But I think for the regular person who isn't experiencing one of those
An illness or
illnesses, like those deep trenches, then like something like mindfulness or meditation can help unlock some things that are just slightly above the ceiling. That, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, like those beliefs and things that just you can't quite see just in going on with your daily life. Like,
Yeah, I think they achieve similar outcomes, but in different ways, very different ways. I think meditation is a much more subtle approach, and you kind of just suddenly one day start to notice, not when you're in your practice, but when you're outside of your practice, just living everyday life.
yeah,
You suddenly start to become aware of yourself and your actions and your behaviors and your beliefs and what you're doing and the way you're living. And you start to then think about that. And I think just the practice of meditation allows you to learn that technique and get better at doing that. Whereas I think psychedelics sort of brings those truths and knowledge to you all at once in an experience.
yeah,
And you then work on like living by that, following the experience. But both of them allow you to come to a place of being more aware of who you are and where you're at with things and how you perceive life and your view on life. And
I think that is really true. Like, I think meditation, it is a slower process because you can like capture the moments more wholly.
it doesn't really tell you anything necessarily. You kind of become your own teacher in a way. Whereas psychedelics, it feels like, and even meditation, it doesn't even feel like you're your own teacher in a way. It just, you just suddenly start to feel more aware of things. It's like so subtle. And psychedelics, I think, is a lot more of a punch in the face with all these beliefs and unlocking all this different way of thinking.
It's up
coming
to you
from
to
another
do the
source, but
interpretation
also
from
within
this
yourself.
huge explosion.
Yeah.
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 That's true.
And on that note, cheers. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we'd like to unpack?
I think that's good. I think we've unpacked some.
That's the
some
art of
truths.
meditation, ladies and gents.
Yeah, so that's a little bit about where we're both at with meditation and
Our thoughts
kind
on
of what we
the
think.
practice and where we could go with it, things we could use to supplement it or not, expectations we have and try not to have, and being human through it all.
Yeah.
Trying to be less human. Yeah, no, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see
I think
where we
it's
go.
more just like,
It's a beautiful practice, though. I'm very grateful for it.
like giving some energy to the parts of ourselves that aren't physical, and doing that through meditation is a great way because you get to know the emotional and belief side of yourself.
And also, we should definitely express a lot of gratitude towards the Heart Mind Institute.
Totally.
And the summits that we've been able to watch.
Totally.
Psychedelic Assisted Therapy Summit was one that we watched, which is why we kind of intertwined a bit of those themes in.
Yeah.
And Art of Meditation Summit. Very lucky to have access to those speakers because obviously it triggers a lot of thought within ourselves that we can use to inform our practice and answer
Spread throughout
questions
our
we
lives.
have.
Yeah.
Without having these spiritual leaders in our lives directly, we can learn through them online, which is awesome.
One day I would love to give him a hug as well. Like, totally.
Fleet?
Like Fleet. Like, I just want to give him a little hug.
Fleet definitely deserves a hug, I think.
Yeah. So awesome to see these, like,
He's a lovely guy, yeah.
I don't know, these just mascots of like meditation and psychedelics and like
human flourishing.
Yeah. It's just so good.
Pushing all this positive stuff and hoping for positive change. Yeah.
Just good people doing good things. So grateful, so blessed.
Blessed to have you.
Blessed to have you.
Bless for all those out there listening.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys got something out of it as well. And yeah, I would really encourage you to try some mindfulness or meditation if you feel inclined by this conversation.
So much more profound than at first thought.
It's not just a practice of not trying to think. That's the whole point, is trying to go,
observe the thoughts. Realize there are thoughts there
Yeah.
that you can recognize. And that starts to give you the dissonance between thoughts and whatever's behind them. And that's the exciting stuff.
Totally. Thanks for watching or listening.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Or not. Kira will.